In 1972, New York City was one of the busiest and most vibrant places in the United States. A city full of bright lights and bustling streets, but it was also a place where many mysterious events occurred. In the heart of this crowded city, in the Chelsea neighborhood, an incident took place that shocked everyone. It was on one of those quiet spring days when the police received a call about a gruesome murder. The victim was Jennifer Morrison, a young woman in her late 20s, a journalist working for a well-known newspaper. Jennifer was considered one of the most promising journalists in American media, writing about social and political issues. She lived alone in a luxurious apartment located in one of New York's upscale neighborhoods. Despite her distinguished professional life, her personal life was somewhat mysterious. There weren't many close friends or clear relationships in her life, which made the investigators question the details of her life. On the morning the crime was discovered, one of Jennifer's neighbors entered the apartment after being unable to reach her all day. The neighbor was concerned because she hadn't heard her usual voice and was surprised to find Jennifer's body lying on the floor of her bedroom, drenched in blood. It was clear from the scene that the murder had been brutal. Jennifer had been stabbed multiple times in various parts of her body, with blood covering much of the floor. There were signs of extreme violence, leading the investigators to believe that the murder was premeditated, not just a random act. What made things even more puzzling was that the apartment hadn't been robbed. All of her valuables were in place, including jewelry and money. The door was locked from the inside, which led the investigators to think that the killer might have been someone known to the victim, someone who knew where things were and trusted Jennifer enough to commit such a brutal act in such an intimate setting. During the initial investigations, there was no concrete evidence pointing to the killer. The apartment was clean with no clear fingerprints or signs of a break-in. The investigators began looking into Jennifer's professional and personal life. They spoke to her colleagues, friends, and people she had interacted with. However, most who spoke about her confirmed that she had a limited social life and didn't share many personal details with anyone. However, the investigators started noticing something odd in her life. Jennifer had been busy recently with conversations with confidential sources regarding corruption cases in the city. She had secret notes containing important information about issues she hoped to reveal in a major report. These confidential sources came from various fields, from politics to economics. She was working on investigations that could expose corruption within the city's political and financial system. And perhaps these investigations were the reason for her murder. While questioning people who were connected to her, the investigators found out that Jennifer had been in a relationship with an eccentric man, someone who was known in local political circles. But the only testimony the investigators had came from another neighbor who claimed she had heard strange sounds that night, but didn't open the door due to fear. This led to another question. Was the killer an outsider, or was this part of a larger conspiracy? As days passed, investigators began to uncover new details about Jennifer's life. One of the investigations that caught their attention was regarding a set of papers she had left at her desk. They contained confidential notes and testimonies about some prominent figures in New York City, especially politicians involved in financial corruption. It was clear that Jennifer was working on exposing significant issues that could shake the foundations of the city if published. While the investigators were trying to follow these leads, the pressure to identify the killer began to mount. The media was closely following the story, placing the police in a difficult position. Meanwhile, some details about Jennifer's personal life, which had been mysterious to many, started to surface. It turned out that Jennifer had a tense relationship with some people at the newspaper where she worked. Some colleagues spoke of recent tensions, especially regarding some reports she was working on that could potentially harm some powerful people in the city. After weeks of intensive investigations, the first suspect in the case was identified. This person was named Henry Bartlett, a local politician with extensive connections in government circles. Henry had worked with Jennifer on several occasions and knew a lot about her confidential reports. He was also one of the people mentioned in her secret notes. The investigators began to track Henry Bartlett closely. At first, he appeared to be a very calm person and refused to openly discuss his relationship with Jennifer. But soon, some evidence surfaced, suggesting that Henry might be connected to the crime. First, fingerprints of his were found on a file containing some of the papers Jennifer had been working on. Second, it was discovered that Henry had visited her apartment the day before the murder. But despite this evidence, there was no conclusive proof linking Henry to the murder. There were gaps in the investigation that led investigators to believe that Henry might have been framed for the crime without solid evidence. While the investigators were trying to get to Henry Bartlett, an unexpected development occurred. During the examination of Jennifer's files, investigators discovered the name of another person who had been secretly connected to her. His name was Daniel Kirk, another journalist who worked with Jennifer at the same newspaper. Daniel was known for his extremist views and questionable connections with powerful figures in the city. After gathering more evidence, the investigators began to identify some intriguing leads. It turned out that Daniel Kirk had been to Jennifer's apartment on the day she was murdered, and he was there at the time of the crime. While Daniel denied any involvement in the murder, the evidence began to suggest that he had been in the apartment during the incident. He had left his fingerprints on some personal items in the bedroom. After further investigation, it became clear that Daniel Kirk had a strong motive to kill Jennifer. It was revealed that he had lost an important position at the newspaper due to an article Jennifer had written, which had significantly damaged Daniel's reputation. It also became apparent that Daniel was facing financial problems and believed that killing Jennifer could solve his issues. The investigators confronted Daniel Kirk with numerous pieces of evidence, and he eventually confessed to the crime. According to his confession, Daniel had visited Jennifer at her apartment that night to ask for her help with a sensitive issue. However, the meeting escalated into a heated argument when Jennifer refused to help him. In a fit of rage, he stabbed her multiple times, and she died. After the murder, he quickly left the apartment and left behind evidence, thinking he wouldn't be caught. Daniel Kirk was arrested after his confession and was put on trial. The case became one of the most famous cases in New York in the 1970s, and it was discussed for a long time in the press and media. The crime was a shock to the city, as it revealed the secrets of journalism and corruption, and how internal tensions could lead to horrific acts. Jennifer Morrison was one of those who paid a high price for her efforts to uncover the truth, and her murder was a powerful reminder that journalists, despite their public service, could be vulnerable due to their work. And although the killer was caught, Jennifer's murder continued to raise questions about corruption in the city and the journalistic system that was filled with challenges. Thus ended one of the most horrific crimes in New York's history, but it left behind many questions that would never be answered. Thank you so much for your time and attention. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to share your thoughts in the comments, and if you'd like more content, I'd be happy to have you join our channel. Your support is what motivates me to keep going. See you in the next video.